Local productions seen on Delta College Public Media are made possible with support from viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Junia Doan's The Spark. I'm Junia Doan, and thank you for joining us. My guest today is Howie Franklin, the only U.S. Air Force flight attendant to serve on Air Force One under 5 U.S. presidents. He is the author of his entertaining memoir, Yes, Sir, Mr. President. Welcome, Howie. You've had a wonderful career in the military and aviation and now run a corporate jet field, so to speak. What did you learn in the military?
I learned how to organize and stay ahead of the game to a certain extent. Uh, General Krulak, the former commandant of the Marine Corps, 40 years ago in Air Force One, I was a lot younger and healthier, and he yelled out to me, Howie, in front of the White House staff, how come you joined the Air Force? I said, well, sir, in 1965 I was drafted, and all due respect to all the other armed services, but I figured out the United States Air Force was the only armed forces in the United States of America that the enlisted man's not the primary resource to get shot. In the Air Force, they shoot the officers.
Right.
And he laughed and said, I never thought of that. I said, I thought of that. So that's why I joined the Air Force. So to a certain extent, I was like a lot of other people, trying to stay out of getting killed.
It seems to me that you have a gift for gab and a gift for getting along with people. How has that helped you through your career with the 5 presidents as working your way up to Chief Steward on Air Force One?
Well, I thank God for the experience. You had mentioned before, I grew up in the summertime at Ocean Beach, Fire Island, until I was 15. I was around a lot of movie stars. Marilyn Monroe, Joe DiMaggio lived down the street. My first marital argument I witnessed was Mike Wallace, and his wife's name was Buff Todd. It was still to this way one of the worst ones I've ever experienced. So I grew up around a lot of movie stars and famous people. So my first lesson in life, I wasn't starstruck. Uh, I didn't realize I was getting any lessons at the time. Later on, when I was 16, I worked at Talisman Yacht Club. That was a jet set in the 60s. The one percenters of today would be there. When we were just down in Palm Beach, uh, Baby Jane Holzer was one of my customers. She was 20 years old at the time. I was 16. But that was a great experience working for all these international people. And I also grew up in a community, Bayport, Long Island, where I grew up with no prejudices and no negative feelings towards people. I accepted people for what they were. And that was a big asset to me also, because there was time in 1965 and even later in the military, there was a lot of prejudice and bad feelings against people of different ideologies and things of that nature, but I never was. And it was an advantage to me that I never realized until later on.
What were the values your family hoped you manifest, you and your siblings? What did they teach you at home?
Well, my mother, they considered her a saint. She taught Sunday school, and my father was a manager of Lincoln Mercury dealership, so he dealt with people, and they taught me in a positive way, and they all taught me to treat people the way I wanted to be treated, and be a good Christian, and appreciate everything that you have. So I'm very optimistic, almost to a point where it's ridiculous, but it's always paid off for me.
Where did you get your drive from? I mean, from earliest times, you just seem driven.
Well, it doesn't seem that way to me. It's just you had an opportunity. I got in the Air Force. I was going to get out as fast as I could. That Talisman Yacht Club, I worked for a Hungarian chef, a Turkish chef, a Greek chef, and I was planning on going on a Greek ship and going around the world. I wanted to see the world at 19, and I got drafted. And I told Mr. Harry Theodore Acropolis, the owner of the International Lines, that if I go in the Air Force, put in for food service, and I come out after 4 years, can you put me on a better ship? And he said, of course. And that was a big deal to me. To him, in reality, it was no big deal at all. And so I went in. I didn't like the Air Force that much. I didn't like the military, so to speak. And my first assignment was Rapid City, South Dakota. And that was my first lesson in life because I didn't assimilate into the community like I should. I kind of hung around with the people from New York and Philly and Boston and things of that nature. We look at the country people enjoying themselves, and we were the idiots, not them. They were enjoying themselves. Uh, I ended up going to Guam, and I got myself in an in-flight kitchen, and because I always had a positive attitude. But at this point, I didn't like the military. I didn't like where I was. I was mad at my country for putting me there. I'm 22 years old. Um, I didn't like my job. The food service was definitely not what I thought it was going to be. It was a very toxic environment, which it could be till to this day. They keep trying to help improve upon it because a lot of people don't like what they do or how they're treated. And flight crews came in and they asked me if they liked me and they wanted me to be a flight attendant. I said, what does a flight attendant do? He said, well, you take care of the general and you plan the meals for the crew and you take care of the airplane. Well, I've been doing that all my life. I can do that. So I said, what do you want me to do? What do I have to do else? He said, well, you're going to have to, we check your military records and you're going to have to extend 8 months over your 4 year commitment to get the job. I said, you got the wrong guy. So they they said, well, we'd like to put you on one flight to see how you like it. Now, when I look back in that, they wanted me to pull me out of one career field and put me in another field without any training on the mission. And we flew with one general and 24 full colonels and went to Okinawa for about 36 hours. Contacted my best friend in the Marine Corps. I had the time of my life, and I went to Taiwan for 5 days. Had the time of my life, and the thing I noticed, the flight crew, they all enjoyed themselves. They all liked what they did. They were all positive, and the major treated me like I was a human being, and not just somebody below their feet. And so that told me something. When I got back to Guam, they said, "What are you going to do?" They knew I enjoyed myself.
Yeah, make sure you enjoyed yourself.
Yeah. Well, and the first meal I served, I'm from Long Island, so I just serve a French dip sandwich, and I put, you know, about this much meat on a sandwich, and that's only not to impress anybody. That's what a sandwich looked like to me. And the whole crew is going, "Who the heck is this guy? Who the heck? What is this guy? What is this?" So I didn't know the last guy was giving him a slice of ham and a slice of cheese on 2 pieces of bread. I wasn't trying to impress him. That was a sandwich to me. And so anyway, yeah, it was a wonderful experience. And then, so anyway, they said, "What are you going to do?" I said, "Well, I can't. I just can't. I can't stay in the Air Force. I can't do it." And they said, "Well, you got to go to personnel no matter what." I said, "What do I got to go to personnel for?" They said, "Well, you got to go collect your per diem." And I said, "What's per diem?" They said, "You paid you so much a day while you were on that trip." I said, "Wait a minute, you paid me? I would have paid you to do that." And so anyway, that's where it started, and I liked what I did, but I wanted to get out. I mean, I came from Bayport, Long Island. The Roosevelts lived there. Vanderbilts lived in the area. We had all kinds of jobs and wonderful lifestyle, and that's what I wanted to do. And the general says, "Well, you're going to go to Andrews Air Force Base for a temporary duty assignment. They're looking at you, and you're looking at them." I said, "What the heck? I'll just go." So I went up there, and I'm going to say God again. They had all these different airplanes, these Convairs and turboprop airplanes, small jets and bigger jets, and I ended up getting put on a large, the big 707s with a crew. And how that happened, I don't know. I'm supposed to start on the little ones and work my way up. So I get a first trip with Secretary of State William Rogers, and we go to London for 2 days. And then we leave London and we serve appetizers on the airplane. We go to Paris for 2 days. And we leave there and we go to Athens, Greece for 2 days. And the trip, I guess, was so rough they had to make a rest stop in Rome for 2 days. Remember I said I wanted to go see the world?
Yes, really.
I'm seeing the world. I'm getting paid well. I'm driving around with a driver in a Mercedes, and so I ended up staying in.
Did you have to do the extra 8 months?
Do what? Yeah. Oh, yeah. I had to do the extra 8 months, but I also remember I didn't like the military. I didn't like the Air Force. I didn't like my job, but I started liking the job and loving the job, and I ended up staying for 29 years.
One of the things I noticed from the wonderful book you wrote of your experiences is is that no matter what, looking good trumps being sick. That you have to show up and do your job because everybody depends on you. And I um, also how you were interested in service that to make another person's life more comfortable, easy, and even fun.
Yeah, and I took pleasure in that. I did take the Dale Carnegie course, so most presidents take it also. But I also, when I took the course, I agreed, or it seemed like they were agreeing with me in my philosophy. And that was my family, the way I was brought up with my mother and father, to treat everybody with great high esteem and things of that nature. Make people feel good. I enjoy doing that. On airplanes, even before Air Force One, my goal was we looked at the aircraft as a dinner theater. And we're there. We're responsible for all the services on the airplane, and we look at it as a dinner theater. And I shared with my people that down at say on Air Force One, there may be a new person on this airplane for the first time on Air Force One. We want them to have a great experience. And the other one is, I would say to them, I want the White House staff to be talking good about you when they're having coffee down the White House, and that's going to help me get you promoted. And they bought into that, and they all felt the same way. We wanted to treat the person in the last seat as well as we treated the president in the first seat.
How did you, when you went up the ladder, how did you discipline people who maybe didn't live up to what you just said?
If you yell and scream at somebody, it doesn't. All it does is demobilizes them for a long period of time. If they did something that was incorrect and it was severe, I'd explain to them what they did and I'll explain to them what they could do to improve upon it. And I would tell them that I have great confidence they can do that. The goal is to change behavior and then walk out of the meeting feeling better about themselves than they walked in there. That was my goal, and it works very well.
That's what you wrote in your book about President Reagan. No matter what, and how little he did for you, he always made you feel better coming out of the room than going in. He noticed.
I unfairly laid for him for 8 years trying to catch him being insincere. Uh, and I know he read the book, and but he felt it and he did it. If I went into the stateroom, brought something insignificant like a fresh glass of ice water, he would stop what he was doing and do something non-verbally or verbally to raise my self-esteem. That's a boss, and he did that to everybody, not just to me. So I mean, he reinforced all the things that I said. Um, One time, on the other side of the coin, there was a President Clinton, and one of his staffers did something really horrendous that really offended him and really made him really mad. And he he didn't do this normally, but he slammed his hand down on the desk in front of the staffer and yelled at him. And I was in the room, and he walked. That the gentleman walked out of the room, and I never would have said this to any other president, but President Clinton and I. He was 1 year younger than me. He was the first president I ever had to listen to rock and roll, and we crossed the line with him. We're supposed to maintain a professional relationship, but it came a little bit more than that. And one of the reasons is I was one of the few people around that wasn't going to ask him for anything. But anyway, after this meeting, and he got very mad at the person. Uh, I explained to him, I said, sir, I said, you're the president. You're authorized to get mad. He did something wrong and things of that nature. But when you yell at him the way you did, you made him, for the next 24 hours, his productivity went down because he feels bad about it, things of that nature. So why don't next time if you get mad, yell at me. And But he got it. I mean, he had read Total Quality Management. That's kind of a book that came out. He even did that through when he was governor of Arkansas. He used positive management, things of that nature. Um, but if you yell and scream at somebody, you're going to disable them for a long period of time when you need them at that moment to be productive, to be ultimate productive. So don't ruin that.
What's the best way to manage you when you had a manager?
Show me an opportunity uh, that I can do. Show me some goals that I can take care of. I'm the airport director of the Cape Fear Regional Jetport Southeast of North Carolina. My people bought into, we're in the customer service business. All my people, they refuel airplanes, they move airplanes. I explained to them that those are tasks that we do. Bottom line, we're in the customer service business. And they bought into it. And they see the results from that. And they get positive results from that personally.
I think you're a great raconteur, a great teller of stories. How do you remember all of them?
Well, you remember things that's exciting to you. And I thank God I had a lot of exciting moments in my life. Believe me,
Did you write them down at the time?
yeah, I wrote quite a few of them down, but most of them is from memory. As an example, I spent when I was flying out of Guam, we spent a lot of time in Taiwan and in Hong Kong and in Thailand and Philippines. It's been, I guess, 60 years. I still speak a little Chinese, and
Oh,
when I go to order at a Chinese restaurant, I'll speak a little Chinese, and they're really amazed that I can say things. But why do I remember that? Well, it was exciting times for me. Uh,
yes.
and you remember when my professors in college, the best ones were ones that excited you, and you remember those things.
So are you the same person at home that you are in public?
I believe so.
Because oftentimes that isn't so. People who are very extroverted in their job, maitre d's and other people, are pretty quiet or elsewhere.
No, I believe I'm very similar, if not even more so at home, because my family and my wife are more important to me than the people at work, and the people at work are very important to me.
And how would you describe your wife? Would she's repartee with you?
Oh yeah, well, my wife, I met her. She was on Air Force One. She was the administrative assistant to President Carter and President Reagan. Then she left the crew, and she became the head of. She was in the National Security Council in the White House, and then she became working for the Secretary of the Air Force. And so she's got a big experience. One of my blessings is we don't need to travel anywhere because we've been all over the world together to a certain extent. So we've been to the same schools, the same education. One of my best schools I ever attended was the Senior NCO Academy, United States Air Force. It was the best, and she went to the same school. So if we get into a disagreement, we see each other trying to use some of the skills we learned in school, and it helps.
You were mentioning earlier that you wanted me to mention that you're a speaker with the Aviation Speakers Bureau, but tell our audience what you told me, how that came about.
Well, how it initially came about, during George Bush's administration, the airplane 27000 that Richard Nixon ordered was going to go to the Reagan Library in California. And I got a phone call here at the airport from the Secretary of the Air Force's office. And the lady on the phone said, "We'd like you and your wife to accompany the airplane. We're both retired now, to take it back to California." And I was tired. It was July. It was hot here, and I was moving airplanes without the greatest equipment. So I said something stupid. I said, "Ma'am," I said, "why don't you utilize? I thank you very much. I appreciate it, but why don't you utilize the people in Washington D.C. before we go all the way to Washington to do that?" She was fine with that, and I told my wife, and my wife said, "You said what?" So
Right.
anyway, I thank God again. The lady called me back from the Secretary of the Air Force office again and said, "Mr. Franklin, you don't understand. Nancy Reagan expects you and Linda to be there." So we went up to Washington, and I had a big ceremony on the airplane leaving Washington, D.C. Former crew members on the airplane. The Secretary of the Air Force was on the airplane. And we took off. And Candace Brown from the NBC program she was doing interviews with all the crew members, and I do some interviews around here at the airport. So I dealing with the press, and I dealt with the press from Kissinger all the way up through President Clinton, and I know they're not looking for yes and no answers. So Candace Brown said to me, "Howie, why'd you come all the way from North Carolina?" I said, "I've been to heaven and hell on this airplane, so I wanted to accompany it." And couple several years later, when George W. was running for office, they had a thing in the Today Show on a mock-up of Air Force One, and because my wife and I, they had us in the Rolodex. We asked if we'd come up and do an interview, and we did. And Al Roker said at the end of the interview, he said, "Howie, I'd love to hear the rest of your stories." And that's when I got picked up by the Speakers Bureau. And I've traveled all over, and I've been quite a few times in Michigan to these town hall meetings and things of that nature, and all over the country. And I enjoy doing it, and the people enjoy doing it. And that's one of the reasons we ended up writing a book, because at the end of the speech, somebody would say, or several people would say, "You ought to write a book." And I think they're just being nice. And my wife said, "No, you got to write a book." So we wrote the book. Yes, sir, Mr. President.
You had a very good co-author too. He had a sense of your personality, seems like.
Well, he's in the aviation business also, and he was a radio announcer and things of that nature. So he understands, like I said, running the airplane, I looked at it as show business. I looked at it as a dinner theater, and we took pride in that. So he understood that. I wanted somebody, I remember I talked to Marlon Fitzwater about writing the book, and I said to him, I would like people, when they read the book, to know how it feels when you talk to Nancy Reagan and she stares at you. And Marlon said, "I remember that feeling. I remember that feeling." Well, Mark was able to do that. I think he was able to take what I said and enhance it.
Well, I appreciated buying it, and I appreciated reading it. Now you have one child, and he's also in the military.
Well,
Yes, and was he persuaded because of your history about the military as a career?
well, yeah, because his mother and I were both in the Air Force, and he went in, and because he was a great kid and good athletics, he was selected to go into special operations in the Air Force. That's not why I joined the Air Force. Uh,
But
and he was in. There was only 50 people in his outfit. He was stationed down in Tampa, and he did a lot of. He was in a lot of spooky places, and did 8 years, and he came out with extreme PTSD, which is I've learned more and more about it. It's real challenging. What happens to those people is they get in a position. One of the things, they get scared, and then the scariness gets worse, and it stays there for a long period of time. So it's he's getting better, but he,
explain that again. I got a sense of it, not completely. What
well,
did you say? That after a while they get scared by
yeah, if you're
what?
in a say he was in Afghanistan, he was in Africa, he was all over, and he was in combat. I mean, he was in the Air Force and went to Army Special Forces Combat School, um, and so you get in. If say you dug in and people are shooting at you and you can't leave, it's that flight or fight. You can't fight. You got to stick there and take it, and your buddy next to you gets his head blown off. It's something that lasts, that cooks your brain to a certain extent. Now, some gentleman friend of ours got him into a oxygen chamber, and they paid for his for his hotel, and he spent 40 days, 2 hours twice a day in a 100% oxygen chamber, getting 100% oxygen. And we're trying to get the VA to go along with this. To do it because it definitely had positive effects on him. Initially, he got out and he said it didn't, but we noticed it, and he's realized it now. Oxygen, they use it for older people to heal wounds and things of that nature, but they believe strongly it can help heal your brain.
Really? From warfare, from that kind of scarring?
Yeah.
Would you say one more word about it? Is just the treatment is extensive, 2 hours twice a day for 40 days? Did you have how long?
40 days, yes, sir. Well, yes, ma'am. But he did it like two. He did a week, and then he came home for a week, and then he did another week. So it did. But it oxygen. You know, I what I understand. Normally, we breathe about 32% oxygen, and they pump 100% oxygen into his body and his brain for a period of 2 hours, and it had a healing effect on it.
Oh, that's miraculous, just right there. I'm so glad we're having this moment of discussion. Anyway, I want to thank you for being a part of the program today. And indeed, I've learned a lot, including the oxygen, which was unexpected. That's something to think about for people who have serious conditions of a certain nature. Anyway, you've made the most of opportunity, some created and some, but you're very good. I remember there's a line in your book 60% of impressions about people are in the first, or the, not what they say, but how they look or how you've experienced them. What have you noticed about that?
Well, yeah, 60% is nonverbal, 40% is verbal, and if you watch that, um, a lot of that stuff, information came from my military experience and things of that nature. So, you know, I think humans are wonderful people. I think it's a gorgeous world. I know we're going through some real bad times right now, but I truly believe, because I'm an optimist, things are going to get better for quite some time. And it's a rocky and hilly road. Absolutely, 100%.
So optimism energizes is generally how I look at it. Pessimism does not. So everybody go out and do something kind for someone you know and someone you don't know and do it every day. And I'll see you next time you tune in. And thank you so much for appreciate that too.
Thank you. Thank you very much. From southeastern North Carolina.
To contact Junia, send her an email at juniadonsthespark@gmail.com. For more information, program schedules, and news about future guests, go to www.juniadonthespark.com. Thank you for joining us. See you next time on Junia Doan's The Spark.
Local productions seen on Delta College Public Media are made possible with support from viewers like you. Thank you.